My parents ignored my wedding and my wife for 2 whole years, acting like I didn't exist. But when they saw the $135,000 green Porsche parked in my driveway, they suddenly showed up with fake smiles and an unbelievable demand. The sound arrived first, a low, guttural thrum that didn't belong in the quiet, tree-lined sterility of my parents' neighborhood. It was the sound of something expensive and impatient, a mechanical predator idling in a petting zoo. I let the 911 GT3 roll to a stop in their driveway. The car, painted in a retina-searing shade of Python green, looked obscene parked on the faded, oil-stained concrete. On the porch, they stood. My mother, Eleanor, and my father, Arthur. They were a matched set of beige cardigans and sensible shoes, their posture a unified front of mild, put-upon annoyance. They were here at my house, a house they hadn't visited in over a year, because they needed to discuss something. Eleanor was already checking her watch, her mouth set in that familiar, thin line of disappointment. Arthur was inspecting the gutter on my porch, probably calculating the cost of its replacement and how I'd likely neglected it. I killed the engine. The sudden, heavy silence of the suburbs rushed in, broken only by a distant lawnmower and the click of my seatbelt. I swung the carbon fiber-backed door open, and the smell of new, expensive German leather and Alcantara cut through the mundane air. I stood up. Neither of them looked at me. Their eyes were fused to the car. Arthur's mouth was open. Not just open, it was agape, a slack-jawed vacuum of pure, unfiltered shock. He looked from the massive, swan-neck carbon fiber wing to the center-lock wheels, his gaze tracing the car's aggressive lines as if it were a spaceship. Eleanor's transformation was faster, more violent. The pinched annoyance vanished, ironed out and replaced by a smile so wide and bright it looked painful. It was a rictus of sudden, rapacious discovery. "Liam," she breathed, the name a puff of air. Arthur, who hadn't initiated a call with me in 31 months, took a shaky step off the porch. He didn't look at me, but at the GT3 stenciled on the rear bumper. "Jesus Christ, Liam," he whispered. It wasn't profanity, it was reverence. "Oh, darling," Eleanor chirped. The voice was new. It was the high, trilling register she reserved for wealthy acquaintances at the golf club, the ones she wanted something from. She scurried down the porch steps, her sensible heels clacking on the walkway, her eyes darting from the ceramic brakes to the Porsche crest on the hood, and finally to my face. It was like being seen by a hawk that had just realized you weren't a rock, but a field mouse. "Liam, honey, you look thin," she exclaimed, grabbing my arm. Her grip was proprietary, a claim of ownership. "We were so worried." "You never call," I called, I thought, the memory as bitter as bile. "I called to tell you I was getting married. You said, and I quote, 'August is just a terrible month for Arthur's allergies and it's so far to drive.' And this car," she continued, her voice breathless. "Arthur, look, it's just marvelous. When did this happen?" Arthur had his phone out. He wasn't calling 911. He was taking a picture of my car. He had asked my wife, Maya, for exactly 0 photos of our wedding. The wedding he and my mother had, regrettably, missed due to a sudden, severe, and entirely fictional bout of gout. "It's a 911, Arthur said, his voice thick. He was trying to sound knowledgeable to prove he belonged in the presence of this machine. "GT3, that's track-focused, isn't it? My God, that's what, 130,000? More." He'd rounded down, but I didn't correct him. "You should have told us things were going so well, honey." Eleanor squeezed my arm tighter, her fingernails digging in. "We could have celebrated." "We did," I said, my voice flat. 2 years ago, Maya and I." Eleanor's smile didn't falter, but it froze for a millisecond, the light in her eyes hardening. "Oh yes, of course, we were just. Well, you know, your father's health." Arthur cleared his throat, his eyes still glued to the 4-liter flat-six visible through the rear glass. "So," he said, "that little project of yours must be doing all right." My little project was a data security firm I'd built from my college dorm room. For 10 years, they had referred to it with a tone of sympathetic condescension, as if I were building artisan birdhouses in the garage. "It's fine," I said. We moved inside. My house was modest, a simple mid-century modern I'd bought for the location, not the size. It was clean, filled with Maya's plants and our 2 rescue dogs, but to my parents it was unimpressive. It didn't scream money. It didn't validate their interest. The Porsche, parked outside the picture window, did. It dominated the room, a neon green monument to my success that made their beige world look faded and cheap. "Can I get you some coffee?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Oh, that would be lovely, darling," Eleanor said, settling on my sofa but not relaxing. She was perched, alert. As I poured water into the kettle, the interrogation began. It was a masterfully passive-aggressive attack, led by Eleanor, with Arthur providing technical-minded backup. "It just seems a little flashy for you, Liam. Aren't you worried about parking it?" This was Eleanor's way of asking, "Can you really afford the insurance?" "I manage. And the mileage must be terrible," Arthur chimed in, leaning forward. "Not a practical daily driver, is it?" This was his way of asking, "Is this your only car, or is there more?" "I have a truck for errands." Eleanor's eyes lit up. "More, it's just, we were so surprised," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "You've been so quiet and then this. It's a lot of car, Liam, is everything. Stable? Are you in debt? Did you win the lottery? How liquid is this asset?" The kettle screamed. I poured the hot water over the grounds, the rich, dark smell of the coffee a stark contrast to the thin, metallic scent of their greed. "Everything," I said, handing them their mugs, "is paid for." The words hung in the air. Paid for. Arthur's eyebrows shot up. Eleanor's plastic smile became genuine for the first time. It was terrifying. "Well," Eleanor said, setting her mug down with a decisive clink, "it's just wonderful to see you thriving." She looked around the room, as if seeing it for the first time. "You know, this room has good bones. Have you thought about knocking out that wall? You could really open up the space. With your means, you could make this place a real showstopper." 2 years ago, this same room was cramped and a bit dark. "Maya likes the wall," I said, sitting opposite them. The name dropped into the conversation like a stone. Maya, my wife, the woman they had met twice and subsequently erased from the family narrative. "Oh," Eleanor said, her hands fluttering. "Yes, of course. Maya, how is she? Still doing her baking? She's a partner at the law firm now," I said. "She's been one for 6 months." "Oh, good for her. How ambitious." The subtext was clear. "How unfortunate for you. In her world, successful women were a threat." "We were just saying, Arthur, weren't we?" Eleanor pressed on, bulldozing past the topic of my wife. "How we haven't seen you two for a proper Sunday dinner in, well, it must be ages." "We invited you," I said. "Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, you were always busy. Gout, allergies, bunco." "It's been a very difficult few years, Liam," Arthur said, his voice taking on a wounded paternal tone. "You wouldn't understand the stress, the market." "The house?" "The house?" I asked. There it was, the pivot, the real reason they had happened to be in the area and braved my cramped house. Eleanor seized the opening. "Oh, it's a nightmare, darling, the association, they're tyrants. Absolute tyrants. They're demanding the entire roof be replaced. Slate, can you imagine? And with the economy the way it is." She let the sentence hang, her eyes wide with practiced vulnerability. Arthur picked up the thread. It's a cash flow issue, son. We're asset-rich, cash poor, you know how it is. We just need to," he waved a hand vaguely, "bridge the gap." My pulse, which had been steady, began a low, heavy thud in my chest. I looked from my mother's pleading, desperate face to my father's attempt at man-to-man earnestness. They were a flawless tag team. "Bridge the gap," I repeated. "Exactly," Eleanor chirped, relieved that I understood. "Just a small loan. 20,000. Maybe 25, just to be safe, to get the work started. We're good for it, you know that. As soon as Arthur's bonds mature." $135,000, I said, my voice quiet. They both froze. "I'm sorry," Arthur said. "The car," I said, gesturing out the window. "You were low. It was $135,400 before taxes." Eleanor's smile wavered, unsure where this was going. "Well, yes, but you know what else cost about 25,000? I asked, leaning forward. "The wedding. The one on the beach in Mexico. The one Maya and I paid for ourselves. The one where we saved 2 seats for you, right at the front, just in case the gout miraculously cleared up." The silence in the room was absolute. It was heavier than the silence after I'd killed the engine. Eleanor's face went pale. The fake tan on her cheek stood out in stark, orange relief. Arthur's jaw set, his eyes narrowing. The wounded paternal look was gone, replaced by the defensive anger I knew so well. "Now listen here, son," Arthur started, his voice low. "No," I said, standing up. "I've listened for 30 years, now you listen. You don't get to ignore my life and then show up to audit my lifestyle. You don't get to ignore the woman I love and then ask me to pay for your roof. Liam, that is not fair." Eleanor's voice was sharp, the trill gone. "We are your family. We've always supported you." "Supported my what?" I laughed, a harsh, dry sound. "My little project. You never asked a single question about my work until you saw what it could buy. You never asked about my wife. You get no pictures of my wedding, Arthur, but my car makes the camera roll. What the hell is that?" Arthur stood up, his face flushed. "You're being disrespectful, Liam. After everything we've done for you." "What have you done?" I shot back. "Raised me, that's the baseline expectation. The legal requirement. Everything after that is a choice. And you chose to be absent. You chose to disapprove. You chose to find me tiresome until I became successful." I walked to the front hall closet, grabbing the jacket I'd tossed there. "Where are you going?" Eleanor demanded, her voice rising to a panicked screech. "We're not finished. We're in trouble, Liam." "So was I said, turning to face them. "I was in trouble when my first round of funding fell through. I was in trouble when Maya had her miscarriage. I was in trouble when I was so goddamn lonely and hurt that my own parents wouldn't come to my wedding that I almost drank myself sick. And where were you? You were busy, you had allergies." I pulled the key fob from my pocket. It felt heavy, solid, a piece of metal and plastic that held more of their interest than their own son. "You don't need a loan, Mom," I said, my voice suddenly calm. The anger had burned out, leaving only a cold, vast emptiness. "You need a new son, one who's richer, or maybe just one who's dumber. I'm not him." "Liam," she cried, a genuine wail this time. It was the sound of an ATM machine being unplugged. "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Just, don't. I'm going home, to my wife, to Maya. You can see yourselves out." You just leave," Arthur sputtered, genuinely baffled. The concept of me having a boundary was as alien to him as the car itself. "You'd leave your parents when they're in need." "You left me when I was in need," I said. "The only difference is I didn't want your money. I just wanted you." They had no answer for that. I walked out the front door, leaving them standing in my living room, two beige statues in a house that was no longer theirs to judge. The afternoon sun hit the Python green paint, and the car seemed to glow with its own internal, venomous light. I slid into the carbon fiber seat, the Alcantara gripping my shirt. The smell of the leather was sharp, clean. It smelled like my choices. I pressed the ignition. The engine didn't just start, it erupted. A violent, shattering roar that ripped through the quiet afternoon. It was an obnoxious, antisocial, defiant sound. It shook the windows of my own house. I saw the china cabinet in their living room, filled with Eleanor's collection, vibrate. I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I could feel their presence, two small, fading figures in my rearview mirror. I put the 911 in gear, the thunk of the transmission decisive. I backed out of the driveway, the wide tires spitting a small piece of gravel onto their lawn. Then I pointed the nose of the car toward the main road, toward the highway, toward the city. Toward home. I pushed the accelerator. The car surged forward, the engine wailing its glorious, expensive, and deeply satisfying song, leaving my parents, their beige cardigans, and their sudden, desperate memory of my existence behind in a cloud of dust, and the lingering smell of unburnt premium fuel.